Refugee by Gratz. Isabel. Off the coast of Florida, 1994, 5 days from home. Miami. It was like a dream, like a glittering vision of heaven. As if Ivan had opened the gates for them, everyone stared, stunned, as though they had never thought they would ever actually see it. When the lights of the horizon became the faint shapes of the buildings, the roads and trees, and they knew for sure they were looking at Miami. They cried and hugged each other again. Isabel cried again for Ivan, cried because he had been so close and hadn't made it. But her tears for him were mixed with relief that she would make it to the States. And that made her feel guilty and cry even harder. How could she be sad for Ivan and happy for herself at the same time? Crunk! Something bent and broke under Poppy's foot, and the boat lurched. Water streamed from a new crack in the hull, and suddenly all feelings of relief ended. The boat was sinking. No! Poppy cried. He dove to try to shore up the hull, but there was nothing he could do. The weight of the ship and its passengers was pulling it apart at last. They all scrambled to the front of the boat, but the back end sank deeper and deeper under the weight of the heavy engine. The top of the hull was almost at the waterline at the back. When the two met, the ocean would flood in over the side, and there would be no going back. They would drown, or end up like Ivan. Terror rose in Isabel like the water filling the boat. She couldn't drown, couldn't disappear beneath the waves like Ivan. No, bail, her grandfather cried. My mammy was lying in the prow of the boat, as far away from the rising water as possible. Her breath coming harder and shorter now, but everyone else dove for their cups and jugs. It wasn't going to be enough, though. Isabel could see that. There was too much water, too much weight. The engine. Isabel suddenly remembered the way it had been working itself loose from its bolts. She threw herself at it, trying to knock it loose. When she couldn't wrench it free by hand and wedged herself in between it and the next bench, down in the water, and kicked at it with her feet. Chavella, leave the engine alone and help us bail, her father called. Isabel ignored him and kicked. If she could just get the engine free. Another foot joined hers. Amara, she understood. Together they kicked at the engine until Isabel finally felt the wet wood around the bolts give. The engine tumbled to the bottom of the boat, covering up Fidel Castro's commandment to them. Fight against impossible and win. Isabel thought. 1, 2, 3, Amara said. Together, she and Isabel rolled the motorcycle engine up the side and almost over, until Isabel slipped and rolled it back down with a splash into the water inside the boat. Again, Amara told her. 1, 2, 3. Up, up, up. They rolled the engine and onto the side, where it pushed a hole below the surface of the sea. Water gushed in, and Isabel felt the boat sinking under her feet, pulling her with it down into the black depths. Down with Ivan and the sharks. No, wait, Sonora Castro cried. And with one last good push, Isabel and Amara tipped the engine over the side. It slipped into the water with a slurp and dropped like a stone, and the back end of the boat shot back up out of the water. The weight of the engine was no longer dragging it down. What have you done? Sonora Castro cried. Now we'll never make it to shore. We weren't going to make it if we sank, Mara told him. We'll row, Little said. When we're close enough in, the tide will take us the rest of the way, or we'll swim. Swim, Isabel worried. With the sharks? Just bail, or we won't be doing anything, Lewis cried. Bail. Bleep, bleep. An electronic siren made them all jump, and a red swirling light came on a few hundred miles to their left. A person speaking English said something over a bullhorn. Isabel didn't understand. From the confused look on everyone's faces in the boat, they didn't either. Then the same voice repeated the message in Spanish. Halt! This is United States Coast Guard. You are in violation of U.S. waters. Remain where you are and prepare to be boarded. Mahmud. Serbia to Hungary, 2015. 15 to 16 days from home. Mahmud stared at the gun pointed at him. Was this real? Or was he still asleep and having a nightmare? The Serbian taxi driver waved the pistol at Mahmud's family. You pay 300 euros, he demanded. This wasn't a dream. It was real. Mahmud had been groggy just seconds before, but now he was wide awake, his heart hammering. His eyes felt dry even though his shirt still clung to him with sleep, sweat, and he blinked rapidly as he looked at his parents. They were already awake, his father hugging and still sleeping. Walid protectively. Don't shoot, please, Mahmud's father said. He threw one of his arms protectively across Mahmud and his mother. 300 euros, the taxi driver said. 300 euros. That was more than twice what they had agreed to pay the driver. Please, Dad begged. You don't die, you pay 300, the taxi driver yelled. His arms shook and his gun danced between the two front seats. Mahmud's mother closed her eyes and shrank away. Mahmud's father threw up his hand. We'll pay. They were being held at gunpoint in the middle of nowhere, in a foreign country. What else could he do? Mahmud's heart thundered in his chest as his father handed Walid to Mom and fumbled with the money hidden inside his shirt under his belt. Mahmud wanted to do something to stop this man from threatening his family. But what could he do? Mahmud was helpless, and that made him even madder. With shaking hands, Mahmud's father counted out 300 euros and shoved them to the taxi driver. Why he didn't demand the whole stash of money. Mahmud didn't understand. You get out, the taxi driver said. Mahmud and his family didn't have to be told twice. They threw open the car doors and scrambled outside, and before the doors even fully closed again, the Volkswagen tore off down the dark road, its red taillights disappearing around the curve. Mahmud trembled with anger and fear, and his mother shook with quiet sobs. Mahmud's father pulled them all into a hug. Well, Mahmud's father said at last, I'm definitely giving that driver a bad review on TripAdvisor. Mahmud's quivering legs gave out, and he sank to the ground. Tears streamed down his face as though they'd been held back a dam before, and now a floodgate had suddenly been opened. He had a gun pointed right at his face. As long as he lived, Mahmud would never forget that feeling of paralyzing terror, of powerlessness. His mother sat down in the road with him and hugged him. Mahmud's tears came harder. Fueled by everything that had come before, the bombing in the house and the attack on their car, struggling to live in Izmir. The long hours in the sea, and of course, Hannah. Mostly Hannah. I'm so sorry, Mama Moo blubbered. I'm so sorry I made you give Hannah away. His mother stroked Mahmoud's hair and shook her head. No, my beautiful boy. If the boat hadn't come along where it did, you haven't convinced them to take her, she would have drowned. I couldn't keep us above water. You saved her. I know you did. She's out there somewhere. We just have to find her. Mahmoud nodded into his mother's shoulder. I'll find her again, Mom, I promise. Mahmoud and his mother cried and held each other until Mahmoud remembered they weren't getting any closer to Hannah or to Germany. He dragged sleeves across, were standing up and saying, Here we are, look at us, help us. But the Hungarian soldiers weren't interested in helping. As the refugees swarmed the border, soldiers in blue uniforms with red berets and red armbands hurried to stop them, firing tear gas canister into the crowd. One of the canisters exploded near Mahmoud with a bang, and people screamed as a great wall erupted around them. Mahmoud's eyes burned like someone had sprayed hot pepper juice in them, poured in the nose. He choked on the gas like to say stop. He couldn't breathe. It was like something drowning on land. He fell to his knees, clutching at the chest and gasping uselessly for air. I'm going to die, Mahmoud thought. I'm going to die.